Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's professional development webinar, Applying to Teach at a Community College. My name is Michaelan Rodriguez, and I am a graduate fellow at the Organization of American Historians. The Organization of American Historians is an external agency of and located on the campus of Indiana University Bloomington. We wish to acknowledge and honor the indigenous communities native to this region and recognize that Indiana University Bloomington is built on indigenous homelands and resources. We recognize the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people as past, present, and future caretakers of this land. We are pleased to be joined today by 4 historians who teach at community colleges across the United States. We look forward to the insights they will be able to provide us on how the community colleges differ from other institutions of higher education and what these distinctions mean for us as historians on the job market, especially when crafting our applications. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's host, Dr. Andy Barbero. Dr. Barbero is an assistant professor of history and humanities at Pensacola State College in the Florida Panhandle. Professor Barbero's work has focused largely on introductory level teaching. In March 2019, his article, Traversing Partisanship in Teaching Peace and Justice in the U.S. History Survey, was published in the Journal of American History. And in 2020, he won an award for outstanding teaching and entry into the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development's Academy of Teaching Excellence, housed at the University of Texas. He is currently serving his second term as co-chair of the OAH Organization of Community Colleges, having been in the position in the 2019-2020 year. Throughout the past 8 years as a community college faculty member, Professor Barbero has served on more than a dozen hiring committees, as well as provided mentorship to adjunct faculty and new instructors. Professor Barbero, welcome and thank you for joining us.
I think we lost Andy.
Lost him. Yeah. Well, I guess while we're waiting on Andy to come back in, we could each introduce ourselves because that was the first thing that he was going to do. So, Tracy, I think you were first in line to introduce. So you would like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I will. Thank you, Scott. Yes, my name is Tracy Davis, and I've been teaching in the community college system for over 33 years. It'll be, I think, 34 this fall, including 9 years as a part-time instructor. I teach now at Victor Valley College, where I've been since 1999, and I'm currently the department chair for history at Victor Valley College. I'm also, other things that I do with history, I'm on the editorial board of FLAIR, the First Ladies Association for Research and Education, which is a brand new organization. I'm also the chair of our Union Faculty Equity and Diversity Committee, where I'm currently past president and co-lead negotiator. But I've also been an academic senate president, and for 6 years, I was our distance ed facilitator. And the biggest thing I did there was move us from Blackboard to Canvas. And so, Scott.
All right.
Megan.
Actually, we'll let Megan go next. Yeah, we'll just keep it in alphabetical order. So, yeah. Megan, you're next.
Sure. I am Dr. Megan McGregor. I teach currently at Austin Community College in Austin, Texas. I've been here since 2019. I've been teaching full-time since 2012. I previously taught at Houston Community College, and I was an adjunct for a few years before that. So I have several years of teaching experience at both university, and I did adjunct at university levels as well. So university and community college. Being in Texas, I mostly teach the U.S. survey classes, but I currently also teach an honors course in women and gender history in modern America. I've presented research and taught classes in Native American history and Latin American history and Mexican American history as well. In my time as a faculty member, I've served on several hiring committees for full-time faculty, and I will be an incoming member of the OAH Committee on Community Colleges starting in April.
Okay, excellent. Andy, we decided to go ahead and introduce ourselves. I see that you.
Yeah, no, I apologize for that. I don't know exactly why the internet decided to just go down in Florida all of a sudden at 3 o'clock on the button. But I'm back, and I've got the combination to the air shield, and I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, I will introduce myself because I'm the only one who has not yet, and then Andy will turn it back over to you as host. So I'm Scott Williams. I'm an associate professor of history at Weatherford College, which is a community college serving students in the counties west of Fort Worth. I've been there since 2006, and I teach as Megan said, in Texas, we do majority U.S. survey courses. So I've been teaching the U.S. history survey courses in hybrid, honors, dual credit, and online formats for the past, since 2006 to today. I currently serve on the faculty senate, and I'm the honors program and on the honors program committee at Weatherford College. I am the co-creator of the Weatherford College Learning Community that's been running since 2019. And as with Andy, I'm currently serving as the co-chair of the OAH Committee on Community Colleges. And finally, in 2014, I was named Faculty Member of the Year at Weatherford College. It always feels weird to read the bios from the I versus the talking to someone else. All right, Andy.
So I apologize, right? Like right when we were getting started, the internet hiccuped it over here. Florida, yay. But I'm an assistant professor of history and humanities at Pensacola State College in the Florida Panhandle. My work focuses largely on introductory level teaching. In March 2019, my article, Traversing Partisanship and Teaching Peace and Justice in the U.S. History Survey, was featured in the teaching and textbook section of the Journal of American History. In 2020, I won an award for outstanding teaching, as well as entry into the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development, Academy of Teaching Excellence. That's at the University of Texas. I'm currently serving my second term with Scott as co-chair of the Organization of Community College, the Organization of Community Colleges. I've been in that position in 2019 and 2020, right before COVID as well. And then throughout my past 8 years as a community college faculty member, I've served on more than a dozen hiring committees, and I regularly provide mentorship to adjunct faculty and new instructors. All right, so I was supposed to introduce all of y'all, but y'all did that on your own. And so I thought maybe what we would go ahead and do is just a few kind of things. When we were talking and getting ready for this, we were all kind of coming up with some basic ground, some basic principles and some ground rules. And so I thought a really good place for us to start would be to talk about the differences between a community college and a university, because I'm betting so many of the people that are watching right now are in a university setting, either in grad school or as an adjunct instructor or something like that. And it's just a very, very different ballgame, to say the least.
Yes.
There's not much appetite for scholarship at a community college. I like to do my scholarship. I mean, what the administration wants is they want people that are very much committed to teaching and willing to teach as many students as possible. And so that right off the bat just needs to be understood. That they are going to want someone who is going to be an out-of-the-box teacher, right? And they're going to be turned off by someone who's just talking about their research in their application materials. What do you guys think?
Oh,
what else is different?
I agree. And it was funny. I was talking about this webinar with one of my philosophy colleagues, and he said exactly that. He has a PhD. He was going to apply to community college through a friend. He did a fake interview with an administrator at a college. And he said, "How did I do?" And she said, "Not good, because all I heard about was your research, and I need somebody who can teach." And that helped him as he went on to interview at community colleges. It is all about the teaching.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's space for you to do your own research, but you have to understand that it is going to be on your own time. And I mean, plenty of us, that teach at community college, we have PhDs, we do research, we present. Andy told you that he had an article published, and I tend to present at conferences. So we can do our own research, but you have to understand it is going to be on your own time. So when you are applying, make sure that you are focused on the teaching aspect, and understand that the research can come, but the teaching is the focus.
Yeah, I guess I should also, qualify that. Like, I'm not saying you don't ever get to. I'm actually like I'm presenting at the Southern in October, right? But I also teach 6 or 7 classes a semester, and so that's what's important to my administrators, that I'm willing to teach a bunch of classes. I'm also the other big thing I would say right along with that is there's lots of repetition. So you want to make sure that you're understanding that there are very little opportunities to create special topics classes and stuff like that. It's about teaching the survey courses. It's about teaching, I teach African American history and African American humanities in addition to the U.S. History Services surveys. I'm sure, Megan, do you teach something besides the U.S. surveys in your course, in your courses?
I am teaching an honors course on women and gender, right? And like Scott said, in Texas, we're more limited on the courses that we're allowed to teach because of the State Board of Education and things like that. But for at least for my institution, the main way that we can get other courses is through honors college.
Here in California, we at Victor Valley College, and we're not alone, and we don't have as much variety as others do, but we not only have the U.S. History Survey plus honors sections of that. We have World, we just reintroduced Western Civ. I teach women in U.S. history. We have African American, Native American, Latin American. And so it's one of those things where I think, to kind of tag on to what Andy started saying, is not only would you be teaching the U.S. History Survey, depending on where you would be, but you'd be expected to step into any of those other history classes. So there's research, but it's going to be research based on teaching a class you may not have taught before, maybe taught parts of in other classes you've done, maybe at a university level.
Right.
Yeah, and
right.
I want to,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
I was going to
Scott.
follow up on that, one of the things is I don't have a doctorate. I left my doctoral program 2 chapters into writing the dissertation, so I have a master's plus, and I'm ABD and all of that. But I left all of that behind back in 2006. But I do still write, and I do still research, and I do still present. In fact, I presented at a conference, a local Texas Community College Teachers Association conference, just on Friday, and I presented on community college teaching at the OAH meeting last year. So I mean, I definitely have gotten out to do those things. And I will say, because you there in the audience, you're hearing us talk about these different things, is so much of what a community college is I think even more ingrained in the state that you're doing it in more than anything else. And as Megan said, Texas is probably one of the most restrictive of what you can teach. And I have been here for, this is my 18th year teaching here at Weatherford College. I have yet to teach anything but a U.S. history survey because we only have, at this point, 2 full-time history professors, and we're a 6,000 student campus, and every student needs to take U.S. history. So it's either taken from one of us or from our adjuncts or embedded dual credit faculty. So the chances for me to ever be able to teach something else, that's why I teach in hybrid and online and dual credit and honors, to give myself that variety of the way that I teach. So I'm not just, as Andy said, repeating the same thing over and over and over again.
Right. I mean, right. But what we're all kind of getting at here is that the survey is going to be your main gig. If you're teaching something that's not the survey, it's not an upper level course because community colleges don't have upper level courses, right? And I would say that I'm in Florida, so Texas, hold my beer in terms of restrictions in your teaching lately. But that kind of actually also speaks to the whole trend that's happening in education, and especially among state and community colleges, which is standardization. I'll say that when I got to Pensacola State College and found out that we all have to use the same textbook across our sections, right? Because there's the Florida textbook law. I was not happy. Thankfully, I'm the head of the committee that chooses the textbook now. So we kind of get to do, I kind of get to dictate what we're doing. But those are things you don't really expect. But that's just kind of how it's going, and that's how community colleges operate.
It's the same in Texas as far as textbooks go. I mean, we run by committee, at least at my community college, we run by committee, and everybody has to use the same textbook simply because every student in the state of Texas has to take both halves of U.S. history, and they may not take it from the same person. So we try and at least make it to where they're not buying two different books or getting two different things. So generally, our students buy the combined edition of the book, regardless of what it is. And so it's that type of thing. We don't have as much. I'm also not allowed to assign a reader or anything like that on top of our textbook. So anything else that I use has to be created and put in place by me inside of the LMS.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. We have a question from the audience.
Yes.
Are they going to come in, or should I read it? I'll read it. Let's see here. Tenured professors at my 4-year college have been laid off, and they're applying to community college and dual credit to stay in higher education. What advice might apply to that situation specifically so their application is not dismissed? That's a really great question, and I would say that this goes for all of it, is to emphasize the teaching element of what you do. I would put your research and publications at the bottom. I would put your teaching experience first. I would put your your college service work second. Then I would put your education, your research, and your professional service on your application. I would talk about very much how you've contributed to the the community in terms of how you've been able to not only impact students in the classroom, but throughout the college community and the larger community. Help me out here, folks.
Oh, I think the college community stuff is really important. I don't know about how it is in Texas and Florida, but I know that, Scott's teaching at a very small school. Well, our enrollment varies between about 11 and 13,000. We're rebuilding after COVID, but it's still the same group of full-time faculty who do all the committees, all of this and all of that. And as somebody who's going to be on a hiring committee for the position we have at our college coming up, I do want to see, do you know about curriculum? Have you served on committees? Even just as a guest, have you attended? Do you know about academic senate? And I know some of these states are right to work states. California has a strong union. I wouldn't emphasize that per se, but I definitely would do your research on colleges to see what their CBA, their collective bargaining agreement, says, if they have one, on the number of hours that you must do this. At our college, it's 18 hours per semester. So if you come in with some of that experience and you read the job description and go, oh, they want curriculum. Okay, I know curriculum. If you tailor your letter and, like Andy said, your resume to really emphasize that, I'm going to be much more interested in going, oh, okay, this is somebody who can hit the ground running in the fall. And they're going to participate and not just teach and go home, which we do have an issue with at our college.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I should also say that one of the things is that even though I'm in Florida, because of the same people in the state government, passing lots of restrictions, they've also deemed that everybody has to take both halves of the U.S. history survey now, right, as part of their requirements. So we're hiring. And I think that if you look at the job ads, it's Florida and Texas that are hiring quite a bit right now. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think another thing I would say in addition to that, to answering that question, although it probably runs into some of the other questions that people have, I see some other questions coming in here, but things like, what is your familiarity with an LMS? How much do you use your LMS? Have you taught online? Have you taught hybrid? Those type of things. I mean, for me, Tracy brought up COVID and the recovery from COVID. One of the things that happened when COVID hit with us is that the majority of us faculty wise had to make no changes to what we were doing here because we've been teaching online. I've been teaching online since 2007. It's kind of at the heart of what we do is offering online in addition to that. And so familiarity, if you have any familiarity with any of the LMS systems, whatever it may be, Canvas, Blackboard, whatever else that may be out there that people use, that's something to highlight. Your ability to teach in different formats. Again, not just what I've already mentioned, hybrid, online, dual credit, but also, we do a 2-week session, we do an 8-week session, we do a 16-week session, we do a 5.5-week summer session. I mean, there's expectations that you're going to be able to teach across all of those because all of us are asked to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Right,
do
right.
you have any other things to add to that?
Well, let's move on.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. So, are there questions you all have been asked in a job interview for a community college that you would have never encountered in interviews for university jobs? I think that right off the bat, the unruly student questions about how to handle discipline issues in the classroom or how to deal with students that are having mental health crises. Those were things that I didn't encounter when I was interviewing in university positions. And those are things that we talk about regularly or that we regularly include in our questions for our prospective faculty. What about you guys?
We get diversity. How do you deal with the diversity and multicultural population? I know that might not be a question in other
We can't
states.
say the word diversity, but we do ask that question in other ways. Yeah.
And that's definitely something that you will probably be asked. And I would think to kind of tag on what Scott said, you will probably be asked about your experience with technology in the classroom and how you use that.
Right.
And I want to add on to what you say about diversity because, it's not just about like racial and ethnic diversity. And yes, in Texas, that's kind of it's a word that we can't really say anymore, but at least we can't say DEI. But our students are incredibly diverse in terms of, yes, race and ethnicity. At Austin Community College, we're a primarily Hispanic serving institution. Same when I was at Houston Community College. But also our students come from diverse economic backgrounds. They are a much wider variety of ages than you encounter at university.
Right.
And so a lot of times, we're asking, how are you going to have a classroom setting where you are reaching out to all students?
Right.
And I think, we have a lot of opportunities in, teaching history that we can bring in, diverse voices.
Right.
They may not be in your textbook, but you can add them to your lectures and you can do things, and I think that that's important when you are applying, that you know that those kind of questions are going to come. The majority of our students are also part-time instead of full-time that you would get at university. So it's a very different sort of student body. And those are certainly questions that you would encounter at,
Right.
when you are at a hiring, job interview.
Yeah, and to add on to that, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say we got a bunch of questions coming through.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
But I don't want to cut you off, Scott, if you had a really good point though you wanted to make about it.
The point I was going to make is that the other thing to think about is, and this is something that this actually came up at the Texas Community College Teachers Association conference I was at last week, because that actually is something that we talk about, is what is the difference between community college and, four-year universities. And one of the things that we brought up is that, our minority of students are your traditional directly out of high school, living on campus, going to complete a degree in 4 years. We don't see those students, at least certainly not where I am, nearly as much. And we are also, community colleges are open enrollment institutions, which means it's not quite, if you can pay, you can get here, but it is very much in that way in a lot of cases. And so you also, you're talking about diversity in terms of
Right.
race, sex, gender, all those type of things, diversity in economic class, but you're also teaching a very diverse group academically, people who are everywhere from they're taking the community college because it's the cheaper option and could have gotten into a highly selective four-year university, to the people who view it as 13th grade and they're just going on to the next thing after they finished out. So sorry, those are the points I wanted to make on that.
Right. Yeah. And you know, that's unfortunately sometimes a mentality of faculty in the 13th grade thing as well, unfortunately. But just to kind of go along with the open enrollment, right? You know, there's a big difference because I taught for 6 years at the University of Southern Indiana, right? And there's a big difference between a 100% open enrollment and say like even like a 75% accepted rate state university. That difference is actually, you know, quite significant. And so one of the questions that we do ask on our is how do you keep a standard, an academic standard in your classroom while making your work approachable to both students who are the dual enrolled high school students, students who are the traditional students, students who are the returning after, you know, a long time out in the world students, and everything in between. And if you can, you know, I would say honestly, you should say that you should use that portrayed as like a benefit. You know, it's something that you see as a really good thing, you know, that helps your students learn from one another. Because if you don't answer it in a positive way, you're not going to get further in that interview, right, folks? Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. Some of these questions, you know, let's see here. What advice would you give to a graduate student about hoping to apply to community college coming from a background in preschool teaching and substitute teaching? Well, the first thing I would say is that you have to have, and this is for, I think this probably applies to some of the other questions. So if you don't have a master's degree with 18 graduate hours in history, you're not qualified to teach history in the state of Florida. So if you have an MFA or you have, you know, a degree in, you know, something like, you know, military studies or something down here with the base and stuff like that, the state and the accrediting bodies don't see that as a qualifying factor, right? And so part of the thing that you have to do is you have to demonstrate that, you know, you have the right qualifications. And that means either a master's in history or a master's in something else with 18 graduate credit hours in history, right? Or else we can't hire you.
And a lot of times, depending on the college, those applicants that don't seem to meet those minimum qualifications, they won't even make it to the paper screening or to the interview. You can petition for equivalency depending on, and again, I can only speak to our college based on either work experience or other things. But to be honest, that's probably not going to get you very far either.
Yeah.
In that when you're competing against maybe 50 to 60, our last history hiring, we had over 75 applicants.
Right.
It did meet the minimum cost.
Yeah. And so that also brings up something else that I think it could be really helpful. It actually was really helpful to me, and I didn't even know until after I got the job here. So I had 18 graduate credit hour in addition to my master's plus, you know, I'm actually defending my dissertation next month. After 8 years at community college teaching, you know, because you got to do it all on the side. One of the things that with me is I had 20 graduate hours in African American studies, right? And that is a humanity, the way that it's counted as a graduate studies under the accrediting bodies. So I was hired as a professor of history and humanities, right? And even though I have no background in the humanities, I still every once in a while have to teach that intro to humanities class, right? But the thing is like that colleges want people that they can use to double dip. right? Not sociology so much in Florida anymore, with all the recent stuff that's been happening, but political science. If you have a master's degree in history and 18 credit hours in political science, that's a big win for us. Or in philosophy, or psychology, anything that would be under the humanities and social sciences umbrella, right? Like if it's an English degree or something like that, that's not in our department, right? But that is a big thing that we look at when we go through our material.
I was going to add on to that, Andy, that, you know, this again, every community college is different. So this, you know, but we are the Department of Social Sciences, which is a combination of history, government, which is political science, but we teach the government classes, economics, and geography. So that's the 4 in ours. And of course, I said that we have 2 full-time history professors now here. We have 3 that are part history, part government, as in they have either a history or political science degree and then have 18 credit hours in the other. So there's 2 full-time history, 3 full-time political science, and 3 people who do some of both. And so when we're looking to hire where I am, if you have the ability to teach more classes beyond history, we're not going to care if you can do humanities or English on our side of things, because we would look to fulfill things within our specific department. Whereas other places are going to, you know, it depends on how the departments lie up and whether you're doing just a departmentally based hire or a more general hire for the college too.
And
so
that,
all of these things vary.
Right, and that brings back a larger point that about the difference between community colleges and universities is that none of us work in a history department. You know, we are very multidisciplinary departments that have wide umbrellas. My department head has a PhD in Spanish. You know, I'm one of two historians, soon to be 3, because we have an opening out of a department of 30 faculty. Right. And the people that you come in contact with on the hiring committees are not all historians either. And so you really want to make sure that you are paying attention to being willing to be multidisciplinary, to be willing to be collegial. And those things should come in your application. And that's because we are flying through time. Maybe we ought to talk about some other, you know, kind of hardline things that we thought were really important in terms of what you need to know to make a good application to get to the interview.
And I think some of the questions we're getting from people who may not have a lot of community college experience, I think we'll answer that with some of the things we're going to say.
Right. So like one of the things I'm seeing is a lot of different questions about teaching and teaching experience. So the way that we in Florida do teaching experience, right? It's college level teaching experience that counts. So high school, substitute teaching, all of that's very, you know, it's not like, you know, we're not poo-pooing it. It doesn't fulfill SACS and state requirements. So college level teaching experience is what we want to see, and as much of it as possible. Right.
Yeah.
And
but
and
another one
doing
of
the
the
surveys.
Yeah. But one of the questions that I saw in there was talking about somebody was interested in teaching 1 or 2 classes per semester. That leads into that, you know, there are openings at community colleges all the time for people who are willing to come in and teach 1 or 2 classes. We have a standing opening for what we would call adjunct faculty at all points in time. We always need more. And for us, our adjunct faculty is more likely to be teaching online, more likely for us, and this is just us because every place handles their adjuncts differently. Ours are more likely to teach online. Ours are more likely to be asked to teach a dual credit class, especially if they've had any experience, maybe teaching at a high school in addition to being, you know, having the college level. Or, and this is to be perfectly honest, if there's not anybody in our department who can teach 7 a.m. classes, which is when our 7:30, which is when our first classes start, that often is an adjunct that if we have adjuncts who can teach at 7:30, those are more likely to be taught by adjuncts than by full-timers because we all have kids and can't get to teach at 7:30 in the morning.
Right. And satellite campuses. That's a big thing,
Yes.
right? None of the tenured faculty want to drive to the satellite campuses. So if you're willing to do that, that's great. But in terms of like getting experience teaching, community colleges like Scott's talking about, because they always need, usually need people. The pay is terrible. There's no benefits or anything like that. But that's how you can rack up that experience for when you're applying for the full-time tenure track position. And
if
that
you ever want to be the inside candidate,
Tracy.
it's our adjuncts who are quite often the inside candidates for positions. That doesn't mean that being an adjunct means you will get a position full-time at a community college, but it does allow us to have some familiarity with you, especially if you perform well in the classroom and have that things get heard about you through the grapevine, because there is a big grapevine of information that comes through. And so that was another one of the questions I think we had of somebody who doing the graduate degree and has never taught. That's how you get out there and you get to teaching, because we will take you. I'm not going to say we'll take anybody breathing who is willing to come and teach in rural Texas, west of Fort Worth. But we'll take a lot of people who are willing to come and teach in rural Texas, west of Fort Worth, if you're willing to come in and do 1 to 3 classes a semester, and you can show up and do what you need to do, and you can get that experience that way.
And I would just add for that part, because we had a question about teaching remote only. And I think Scott and Andy have kind of addressed that a little bit, but I will say that the thing about remote for part-time, like you would have to meet our online teacher requirements, either by taking a course that we offer or something through the state, or if you can prove that you have the equivalent. But there is kind of an unwritten policy at our college that we will not take out-of-state applicants. So you need to make sure before, if you're in Florida and you want to teach in California, that there are some colleges that might say no, because as Scott said, you've got to show up. We need people to teach the face-to-face classes. I'm a one-person department down from 4 total, so I can only do so much. And we need people on site, not just online. So you might need to be closer. And to tag on what Andy said about going to different campuses, I did interview for a job in 1999 up in the Central Valley of California, where the full-time position did involve traveling between different it was a requirement. It wasn't optional. If you were full-time, you were going to drive 50 or 60 miles. But I'm from California. We do that to go to the grocery store we want to go to. So that was not a big deal for me. But in other states, it might be. So just be aware of that.
I if you'll permit me, one thing I want to mention, I think I'm in a little bit of a different situation because the institution I'm at and the one I was at previously are much larger than I think everybody else on the panel. But so we also have like multiple campuses in town because of that. So like I might be the only full-time historian on my campus, but we have multiple full-time historians at Austin Community College, but we also very much emphasize dual credit. So, and some of those dual credit classes are held on high school campuses. So we have high school teachers that meet the education requirements. They have the master's, at least 18 hours, graduate, and they teach our classes at their own campus. And sometimes it's our full-time faculty. I have taught when needed. I have taught classes at high school.
I did it last semester. I was at our local high school last semester
right.
teaching dual credit history class. So yes.
Yeah. So and a lot of our adjuncts, they teach, Austin's very large. They teach from one end of the city to another. And you don't always have to do that, but if you're willing to do that, a lot of times, you are looked at as favorably, right? Just to get that experience. And when I started adjuncting, I never said no. I never said no to a class. And no matter like how far away it was, I did everything to get that experience. So, you know, if you're worried about that, check with your local community colleges, see, you know, almost all of them are going to have those openings, and it might be for dual credit or it might be on campus. And I think those are the best ways to get that experience, so that you can, you know, maybe apply for the full-time positions down the road. But a dual
Right.
credit is a big one for us.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was going to
So,
pull off of what both Tracy and Megan said there. And, you know, the other thing is that we are going to, and this is what Tracy said, I mean, we are going to look local, you know, first for anything. And the only people we have teaching for us adjunct wise who are not located locally are ones who started with us locally and then moved away for some reason. And those we will usually keep on. So you can't apply to Weatherford College adjunct from Massachusetts. I mean, that's just not going to happen. We're not going to do that. But anybody in the area, we definitely will. And I will also say one of the things that I remember this from my interview back in 2006 here at Weatherford College, and I know several colleagues who do this in the state of Texas. One of the questions I was asked is, would you be willing to teach at a prison? And we do have, we teach at prisons. We don't particularly at Weatherford College, but that question was in there because it's a possibility we might. But I actually know a number of faculty members across the state of Texas who teach, for example, down in Huntsville, Texas, the Huntsville prison system that we have, that is full-timers and adjuncts that we have teaching in the prison systems as well. So that's another place that was a question that I did not expect, but
so
as Megan just said, I said yes because you say yes.
right. So here's the other thing though, right? Like we're all advocating that you need to get part-time experience, probably to be able to have a shot at one of these jobs. But the other thing is if you even have that experience and you don't you don't take the time to actually put together good materials, that's not going to be helpful because everyone's going to have teaching experience by this point. By the time, right? So like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is great for the interview or great in terms of, you know, the back end of it. But like to get in front of a committee, your materials, you need to make sure that you write materials that are specific to each job, that answer the questions specifically on the job posting, right? And you want to make sure that you don't overlook, you know, that you don't really go too far beyond that. Again, like if you're talking about your research and your scholarship in your application with us, we're not going to probably finish looking at your application because it tells us that you have a different set of goals than what we have for the college. Right. And also before we go, just one more thing, like, so one of the things that I did that my faculty at the university didn't want me to do, and I know that some of the Southern Illinois University folks where I went are watching. They told my advisors were like, no, don't go adjunct. Don't go adjunct. You need to be focused on your scholarship. You need to be focused on your scholarship, right? This is, if you can get an adjunct job part-time while you're in grad school, take it. Because that's how you'll get a job, right? Megan, yes, but Tracy, yeah.
I actually didn't do it that way, but yeah, I do agree with it today. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
went
had
ahead,
five. Yeah, I had 5 years of grad. I was a graduate student instructor. I had 5 years of that because I had finished my comps and stayed as all the way through writing two dissertation. So I was able to go out in the job market with that, you know, with saying I had 5
Well, I mean, but I will say this though, like we don't accept graduate teaching as experience anymore.
Yeah,
that's something that has changed in the last. That's something that has changed in the last 7, 8 years. So graduate student teaching is cool to have on there to show that you're committed, right? Because if you didn't get a TA-ship or an RA-ship, you know, like that says something too sometimes, right? But like you gotta have instructor of record teaching, right? So if you're the instructor of record as a TA, that counts. if you're just TAing for another faculty member, that doesn't. I should clarify like that.
Yeah, because that's what I say. I was a grad student instructor, so those were my classes, and that's that's where I had on that. But you're right, TA ships would not. Although, honestly,
right. And so you're
if
right.
you have that, don't discount it. But yeah, you need to have. We are looking for people who can.
Right.
I think the
And
point we're all making here is you need to be able to step into the classroom as soon as you get to us if we are interviewing you, because we may be interviewing you a month before the semester starts. We interview all the way. Sometimes we find out we're losing somebody in June. We're interviewing in July, and you're starting August 24th or something like that. And the expectation is you can hit the ground running. And that's one reason we do emphasize the teaching so much in this.
Right. Okay. Right. And so one of the ways that you can differentiate on your application to make sure that we know is it needs to say instructor. When you're filling out your CV, instructor of record. Teaching assistant does not clarify that. And that's something that I think is important. The other thing that I'll say about like the application is like make sure you have somebody else proof it as well, especially if you're applying to multiple jobs in a 1 week, because so often people will call the school the wrong name because it's another school they're applying to, or they'll use the wrong person's name at the top, and it just looks sloppy.
Yeah, it does. And one of the things that I think we've kind of talked a little bit about is do the research on the college you're applying to. I mean, I'm in California, but I'm in the high desert of California. I'm not in the California you see on TV. And we are, one of 3 colleges that are in the high desert. We're the largest of the 3. And we have very unique things going on here, all of which are available on our website, our schedule of classes, our collective bargaining agreements, all of that. And so when I've been on previous interview committees, not just for history, but for English, math, all this stuff, the candidates who stand out will go, well, I was looking on your website. And I noticed that the demographic is this, and I teach a class like that. Or I notice you have mostly US history survey classes, and here's how I fit into that. And boy, the little light bulb goes off on our head and goes, this person has done their research, their letter is tailored to us, they're honest, they're clear. If you say you can teach online, which platform have you taught online? Because if it's Blackboard and we're Canvas, that it's not going to be a make or break thing, but be clear so we know exactly who we're talking to.
Right. And also I
remember when I interviewed in 2006 that I actually got to campus several hours early and just walked around to familiarize myself with it. Of course, I realized that Weatherford College in June was brown. The buildings were brown. The grass was brown. And then I moved in August, and it was the first of 24 days of 100-degree weather in a row there and all that. But I do think, yeah, go ahead, Andy. But there's one other thing.
I will say though that most of the job interviews now, the first rounds are online, right? So you don't necessarily have that opportunity, but when you get to your second interview, that absolutely it could do it. But something that I'm like not doing very well today, right? Apparently, I don't have a good internet, and that's always a big pain in the butt. So make sure you have good internet. The other thing is like someone asked about free community college programs. Well, most of my students are on some type of aid because it's a very poor area anyways. So it's already kind of free for most of my students, or very, very low cost. So that hasn't really changed anything except for tell the administration, we can cast a wider net for enrollment and recruitment. But here they've got one. Does community college hire people who do not have work permits because they are not U.S. citizens or have work visas? It is very, 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 very hard to get my administration to agree to sponsor a work permit. I've only seen one in 8 years, and it was for a French teacher.
I've never seen any.
No,
I'm just saying.
We get so many applications that we wouldn't even. Honestly, and this, I think Tracy said this before as well, we wouldn't look at somebody who, we have so many who do fit what we're looking for that if there's something that doesn't, we just very honestly will be pushing that to the side pretty quickly.
And if I can add kind of one thing, because I know we're getting close on time, One other consideration that has become very prominent at our college is, Andy mentioned the second level interview. Well, most of our first level interviews and second will be in person. And we do try to think about people who have to fly in or drive long distances to make those short. But at our college, it's been made very clear to the hiring committee, which we now call a search committee, that it is the president who makes the ultimate decision. And he wants a specific number of people to go forward to that second level interview. He wants like a minimum of between 2 and 3. So there are things beyond the committee themselves, and I think we all root for everybody who comes in. We want you to do well because we're going to work for you. But the decision may not be in the hands of the actual committee. It may be in the hands of one or more administrators who definitely, they have their own criteria by which they're going to interview you. So and I know every college is different. Yeah.
Yep. Recommendation.
Yeah, it's a recommendation. We're making a recommendation. Yes. And ultimately, right, it falls down with the administration to decide who's going to do it.
Andy, there is one thing I see on our list of talking points that we have not said yet.
Okay, go for it.
I was going to say that we've hinted this multiple times, but a thing to know that's different about community colleges than four-year universities is we have a heavy teaching load, which generally starts at a 5-5, meaning 5 classes each semester. And I say generally starts at because I don't know that I have ever taught a 5-5. I generally teach either 6 or 7 classes a semester and usually teach multiple summer classes. So my average teaching load has probably been something like a 6-7-2 in my 18 years of teaching here. And is that we just haven't explicitly said that, but a lot of people coming from four-year universities, I've heard people at four-year universities say they've got a heavy teaching load when they've got 3 classes in a semester. And I just say, wow, I wish I did. And we don't, in general, we have no TAs. That is something else that we do not have. There is not anybody but you who is in the class and in charge of the class. Unless maybe we sometimes get a work study that'll help us with that, some copying or something like that for the department, but you are 100% responsible for delivering the class, for assessing the class, for grading the class, and for everything else that comes along with it. That is you yourself for 6 to 7 sections a semester and so forth.
And part of the reason why is because community colleges don't pay great. And overload is how you survive. So, I mean, that's just, and so to ask how many students are in my classes are normally capped at 35. What about you folks?
35
30.
for face-to-face.
36. 36.
Yeah, we're 30 generally overall.
And that's something you can usually find out in the CBA. Right? Like I'm in Florida, we have a union though, we have a CBA that's posted, and all of that stuff has been bargained. So you can know it all ahead of time.
And I will say about
totally
pay,
by your school.
Yeah, I will say about pay here in California, keep in mind, even our area, which used to be really reasonable cost of living, we do pay well in California. And that's one of the reasons there's a lot of competition for full-time jobs here. And one thing to add to your class load is also mandatory office hours, which for us is 50 minutes per class. So if you're teaching 5 classes, you have 250 minutes of office hours, and that has to be approved by the administration. So you also have to budget your time for those as well. Some of ours can be online, but a lot of colleges, you're in person.
It was explained to me that our 40-hour work week is 15 plus hours in the classroom. We have a requirement of 10 minimum office hours, 10 office hours in a semester, and you are expected to be working the other whatever it is to be up to 40 hours. Not that somebody's going to be tracking every minute of what you do, but that is your time for class prep, for grading, for like we tell our students,
to the college.
You're going to work 3 hours outside of class for every hour in class. You're going to work outside of class for every hour you're in class as the professor as well, whether it's
Fridays are for meetings.
Yes.
Fridays are for meetings.
Right.
Fridays are for meetings.
Right. But I'll say this, like we all really love what we do. We're not complaining. We're just trying to make sure that you have your eyes wide open, that this is a completely different monster. And it's not something that your university faculty can really prepare you for because they don't understand it. As hard as they want to support you and everything, right? And that's another thing. So when you're telling your faculty members to write your letters of recommendation for you, they should focus on your time in the classroom as a TA, helping them or doing those things, and not on your dissertation or on your master's thesis, because nobody wants to read about that. We want to know, we want somebody to affirm your ability in the classroom, not somebody that's going to be talking about how great you would be at a university setting.
But to tag on to what Andy said, we change people's lives at the community college level. Not just to become history majors, so I did have that happen for the first time in a long time last semester, but you are the first higher education person students are going to encounter from all these diverse economic, social, except, first generation college students. And we can do some wonderful work. I wouldn't be standing here without my community college. That's where I started. And that's what makes it worthwhile by and large.
Right.
We're not teaching majors. Yeah, we are not teaching majors. I don't know what the majors of most of mine, although if you ask most of mine, they want to get into our nursing program, and history is, one of the classes that's required for the associate's degree. So that gets them into the nursing program. I do not, to my knowledge, have any students I have ever taught who went on to become history majors, but they may have. I see them usually their first semester here, and I do my best to get them going and to give them the skills to succeed in what happens afterwards. And that's often then the last time that I see them. And I don't know where things go from there.
I have had students become history majors because of my classes. And as a matter of fact, we have an articulation agreement with the University of West Florida. So like if you get your feet wet if our students decide they want to explore history, we have a really easy conduit to get them into the university setting where we're at. But most of ours are nursing students or general transfer students and stuff like that. And I think that's important to recognize that, right? They're not majors, so they're not coming into the courses with the same kind of enthusiasm that an upper level 300 course would be. So again, to bring that back to the application, it's about entry level teaching, right? Like, the very basics of it. And as much as you can convey not only your experience, but your passion for it, which I think you see every one of us has a passion for it. We're falling all over each other to tell you about our own information and stuff. Experiences, because we love what we do. We're all very passionate about it. And if you don't kind of have that passion or don't demonstrate that passion in your materials or in your interview, you're going to get overlooked, I think. And everybody wants someone that, is going to be a good colleague too, and I think that's important to remember as well, to be presentable, to be enthusiastic, that goes a long way in our hiring committees.
Yes.
I think that Andy, I think you closed it out very nicely there, because I think we were at that time. So I think you closed it out.
It's right at 4:00. So I think that the OAH folks are come on and say some things.
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and a special thank you to Andy and our panelists